Hey everyone, welcome back to It's a Wonderful Podcast. I am Morgan Robinson, but of course you already know that, because, or at least I hope you do. If you don't, then hi, I'm waving by the way. I hope you get to know me soon. I'll just say that, because I'm very nice like that. With me, as always, is Nolan Dean. Hey buddy.
That intro, you sound like a Tinder profile.
I hope to God I don't sound like a Tinder profile. That would be literally the worst thing I could ever possibly sound like. Yeah.
It could be worse. You could sound like me.
Worse. No, it couldn't be worse. You sound much better than a Tinder profile, at least in my opinion, or from my very, very sort of small knowledge of Tinder or anything like that. Anyway, today we are talking about Rebecca, which is Alfred Hitchcock's film adaptation from 1940 of the Daphne Du Maurier novel. And Nola, I think the question everybody wants answering is, because we all know how much you love reading, Rebecca, have you read it?
I read Rebecca way back in high school when I was in my snobby literary phase, and man, that was something. And it also does not help that my psychotic ex-girlfriend was also named Rebecca.
Ah, see, Did she damage you as much as she clearly damages Mr. De Winter?
I wouldn't go that far.
I would hope not. I would hope not. You seem to come out quite well.
We haven't burnt down any houses yet, but
no.
Yeah. The name Rebecca just...
Don't like the name Rebecca after this now. Nobody called Rebecca will ever be in Nolan Dean's good books anymore.
I will not name my daughter Rebecca. She will probably be named something better than that.
What if you fall in love with someone named Rebecca?
That is not going to happen.
How do you know? How do you possibly know it's
not going to happen? Because if they
are
named Rebecca, that is like an ultimate turn-off now.
Okay, but don't come crying to me when someone turns around in a year's time called Rebecca who's perfect.
Well, you know what?
I have certain names I hate, but, you know, if someone turns around, the name's not going to put me off.
Well, you know what? If you're the best man at my wedding, then you can tell this story.
I'm involved in everyone's goddamn wedding. What's going on?
Dear.
Getting off the topic and for some reason speaking about weddings, we are today, of course, yes, talking about Alfred Hitchcock's Rebecca. So, Nolan, having read the book, I am interested to know if it's a very faithful adaptation or not. Or if Hitchcock does like to do his own thing, which we know he has done in other Hitchcock adaptations.
He has, and surprisingly, this is a very loyal adaptation.
Oh, okay.
If there was anything I could compare it to nowadays, I think it would be how David Fincher, who's commonly seen as the modern Hitchcock, if you like to call him that, how he adapted Gone Girl. It's a very similar kind of situation with that book.
Okay. Because I mean, this was my first time seeing Rebecca, and I haven't read it. I put it on the poll for this week, and thanks to everybody who voted on the poll, by the way, because I was indecisive and couldn't choose which film to watch by a very slim margin. Rebecca won out over three others. That was Roman Holiday, Bicycle Thieves, and something else.
See, I voted for Rebecca on that poll because of books.
Else. Oh, Nolan voted on the poll. But yes, thanks to everybody that voted on the poll. The reason that I put it on that poll, the reason that I was thinking about it was because recently I've sort of been getting into a bit more into literature, and of course, being me, will only go for the older stuff.
One of us.
Yes. But so far, well, I should say so far in my literary journey, I've read maybe 2 books.
Oh, don't worry, I'll solve that.
But no, I'm much more drawn to older stuff, early 20th century stuff, 19th century stuff, stuff like that. So Rebecca was on my sort of look at list because it always seemed like a really sort of eerie mystery, bit of darkness in there, bit of creep factor in there, and it's I figured watching the film would make me want to buy the book more, and it certainly has done because I think it's an excellent film. It's a wonderful film.
So I take it the book is on your Amazon wish list.
Certainly is. Yes, it certainly is. I'll get those Amazon wish lists done. Love them.
Fantastic.
But yeah, what did I actually ask before I went off on another trademark ramble? Nolan, what does the book do different, or does Hitchcock do anything different to the book in its adaptation?
Well, it's not so much that he does stuff different artistically, but there were certain laws that he had to abide by because of the motion picture code back then.
Okay.
And I can't talk about them without mentioning spoilers, so if you haven't seen Rebecca, I'm sorry.
I was aware of this because I really don't want to spoil this too much because it's such a wonderful mystery, and especially for mystery films, I feel like it's really sort of iffy ground to spoil them. So let's say a skip 90 seconds, 2 minutes maybe, until we're done talking about spoilers from when I finish this sentence. So yeah, Nolan, go ahead.
So in the 40s, there was a rule that said you cannot have a spouse kill their partner and get away with it. And an interesting thing from the book is that Mr. Maxim de Winter kills Rebecca straight up.
Seriously? That's...
Like, they're having an argument, and in a spur-of-the-moment thing, he shoots her in the chest. It's not like he was cold-blooded murder, but it was kind of one of those spur-of-the-moment things, kind of like how Gone Girl tackled domestic abuse.
Yeah, okay.
And
that doesn't
that
doesn't happen in the film.
It doesn't.
There's no murder in the film. Rebecca's death is, as we can gather, an accident for the most part.
Yeah, that's the funny thing about stories. There are no accidents.
Who's that a quote from, or is that a Nolan Dean special?
That is a quote from my book Moonflower, which will be out soon.
It is a Nolan Dean special. It is a Nolan Dean special. No, that's really interesting, though. That's really interesting.
It's only going to get more interesting.
Oh, I'm sure it is with a film, a story like this, I should say.
Remind me what the name of the main villain of this book is, because I keep forgetting, and she's a creep.
Of course. Mrs. Danvers,
Mrs. Danvers,
who throughout me watching this film, maybe nearly done with spoilers, just in case anybody's coming back into it now. Mrs. Danvers, or as I referred to her as, because this was my first time watching Rebecca, I figured if I watched the film, I'd buy the book more. So obviously I haven't read the book. Mrs. Danvers I was referring to as the woman in black throughout this entire film. Just because she was a very cold person who just walked around everyone, just did horrible things, just backhanded horrible things. It was just... I don't like Mrs. Danvers. I don't like her, Nolan.
Well, the Hollywood didn't like her either, because in the book she has a very maternal relationship with Rebecca. Kind of raised her and was there for her whole life, almost like a surrogate mother. And in the movie, it's implied that it's more of a romantic relationship.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's weirdly what I got from it. I got much more of a Mrs. Danvers being obsessed with Rebecca, the former Mrs. De Winter, of course, than like maternal in any way. I don't see her as a mother figure to a character that we don't even meet in Rebecca. But yeah, I definitely get an obsession, and that's why I think what ultimately happens, I don't really want to spoil it too much, but I'll just say what ultimately happens in the end is just it's Mrs. Danvers, a show of madness from Mrs. Danvers rather than a sort of protection for a child.
Yes, and it's implied in the film that she dies.
It is.
But in the book, it's left a bit more ambiguous. It doesn't say whether she lives or dies. But the reason they showed her burning in the fire apparently was some kind of ode to Hollywood's attitude on homosexuality at the time.
Oh,
which I found
God.
very interesting.
Oh. See, I didn't know that at all. That is... Wow, that is legitimately thought-provoking. Yeah, because like I said, I think it's definitely an obsessive relationship that Mrs. Danvers has towards Rebecca. So if you construe that as homosexual love, and Hollywood wanting to, I mean, yes, it was the early 40s. So, yeah. Hollywood wasn't a nice place for its morals back then. A really good place for its quality of films and its just sort of bizarreness and everybody sleeping with everybody. If I might bring up a bit of trivia that I actually know a bit later on as well.
Oh, fantastic!
But morally, quite a dark place. So that is really interesting that Mrs. Danvers in the film may have actually been quote unquote killed due to her romantic feelings towards Rebecca. And it's interesting that isn't, well, obviously it's not going to be the case in a novel written by Daphne Du Maurier, the woman.
No. But I did find it interesting that they didn't even cast an actress to play Rebecca. You just kind of hear about her.
Oh yeah, I mean, is Rebecca... Well, so you're telling me Rebecca is actually in the novel?
You do see a couple of like little flashbacks with her, but
okay. No, there's no Rebecca
described
in the film.
More
Rebecca.
in the book, but in the film, it's kind of more. It's weird. It's the opposite of the show don't tell thing. But I think Hitchcock wanted to make her like as mysterious as possible.
Well, I think he did that perfectly. This is pretty early. I mean, it's not early Hitchcock, but it's early mainstream Hitchcock.
It's before Psycho, like.
Well, it's 20 years before Psycho. It's 8 years before Rope, which is what I always sort of put on Hitchcock's starting mainstream point. Well, no, because maybe then there's Notorious as well, which is like 1940, 1941, I think. It's early mainstream Hitchcock, Rebecca. Hitchcock has already by this point got the fact that he just wants to create the suspenseful, the tense, the eerie atmosphere down to a T. I think it's perfect in that way, the film. It really paints a picture of Rebecca as this very interesting, almost sort of, well, definitely at first, a sort of revered figure, almost like a perfect woman. But then, obviously, as you go through that, and the mystery and things start to be revealed, she may not be as perfect as we all thought she was at the start.
And our leading lady doesn't even have a name.
Mrs. De Winter is her name. Mrs. De Winter.
It's not even referred to by a first name or anything.
At any point. At no point.
I think it's the same way in the book as well.
I would hope it is. I would hope it's the same way as in the book. What I take from that is very much the story making the consumer aware that people don't really care about Mrs. De Winter and that their mind is always on Rebecca. Because
it's a very good choice.
They even refer to Rebecca as Mrs. De Winter in front of Mrs. De Winter. Which is, as far as I'm concerned, a not pleasant thing to do. when
No,
you've just
not at all.
when you're newly married, to hear your husband's former wife being referred to as your now name. But I think that's ultimately why the choice will be there to not give her a first name. It's just to sort of make everyone aware that she's alienated from the rest of them, for the most part in the story, at least. Anyway, but okay, yeah, go on. Sorry.
Do you also love how unapologetically British this is?
Yes. And I haven't read the book. I haven't read the book. I can only imagine the book is equally, if not more so. But
when I read the book, I felt like crumpets were going to start shooting out my mouth.
Oh, that'd be nasty. How many crumpets would you have to eat to have that many crumpets shooting out of your mouth at rapid fire?
It's just... There's a show I watch on the internet called Lost in Adaptation, and he did an episode of focusing on Rebecca, and he's a British critic, and even he was complaining that this book feels too British at points.
I don't...
It's just really funny.
I love that about some books and stories, though. I love it when they're so British like that. Obviously, because I think we are British, so we can gather what's more British than maybe a non-British reader would do reading it. But
so if Raoul is listening to this episode, we're going to have to explain to him what crumpets are.
What do you mean if Raoul is listening? What do you mean if? If Raoul is listening to this episode? Of course he is. Hey, Raoul, how are you doing?
He's at the gym right now. He's pumping iron and listening to us.
He'll be looking like Schwarzenegger before we know it, but 1984 Schwarzenegger, not now Schwarzenegger. Not current Schwarzenegger. Hi, Raoul, we love you.
But Schwarzenegger is not in Rebecca.
No, he is not. No, he is not. I did want to talk about the location, though.
Please do, because it's one of the best parts of the book.
Cornwall. Well, it starts in Monte Carlo. And actually, okay, big tangent. I've been to Monte Carlo, and it's a weird place. It's a really, really weird place.
I want that on the travel brochure. It's a weird place.
But it's like a theme park that's not a theme park.
That sounds creepy.
It is literally as though it's from another world. Because everything is just screams billions and billions of euros or dollar and whatever currency you might be using. Every single detail of Monte Carlo. And I've been in front of that casino that is in that one shot near the beginning, the casino where where Maxim and Mrs. De Winter meet for the first time. I've been outside there, and well, basically you couldn't count the amount of Rolls Royces. You couldn't count. There was that many of them. It was ridiculous. I didn't like it because it just seemed like I was on a completely other planet. So I have a really weird relationship with Monte Carlo, first of all, but I don't have a weird relationship with Cornwall, which is where most of Rebecca is set, in the fictional estate of Manderley in Cornwall, based on, I believe, Daphne Du Maurier's actual home.
Oh, that explains so much. That explains so much about her books, if that's based on her real home.
A true country house estate in the finest way. But I did used to holiday in Cornwall when I was very young. Too young to remember everything about it, but not. But I'm still fully aware of just how much first of all, just how pretty Cornwall is as a place, really, as a country place, but just how, again, weirdly, in the same sort of vein to Monte Carlo, how it feels like a completely separate place from the rest of Britain.
Yeah, I get that.
Maybe it is because it's geographically a separate place. It's like the Florida of Britain.
God, that is fantastic.
But not as weird as Florida.
Sorry if Kimber's listening.
I say weird as Florida. I mean weird in the best way.
Of course.
Cornwall. Well, for one, it has its own language.
What?
Very few. Cornish is a legitimate British registered language.
Their pasties are also delicious.
I prefer a nice Lancashire pasty if you're going to start talking about pasties, but that's only because I'm from there.
They're not eating pasties in.
No, they're not eating pasties.
They're probably shooting ducks and then roasting them.
There's definitely, yeah. This place is the sort of place where a lot of hunting would happen. A lot of game hunting would happen. What was I saying? I was saying
about Cornwall.
Cornwall, I do remember being the kind of place where the weather can really feel. I mean, we as British people love the weather anyway, even when it's garbage. We just love mentioning the weather. But in Cornwall, I do remember it. It can very, very quickly change, and it can really dampen a sort of mood of a place. Like if you're on a field and it's sunny, and then half an hour later you're on a field and the fog's coming, it's gone overcast, and you just feel like, oh, what's happening here? It's like it's creepy. It can get quite creepy, and
I'm not going to visit Cornwall anytime soon.
I'd say visit Cornwall. It's been 15 years since I visited Cornwall, but I have those early memories of Cornwall. And, well, Cornwall is itself, or Manderley at least, the estate, is a full character in Rebecca.
And that's what's great about it. It's even more so in the book.
Well, please explain how it is more so in the book, because I love what Manderley itself does.
Daphne Du Maurier has this weird thing where she uses a lot of like well-described metaphors and similes, so almost everything in Manderley smells or looks like something, and it gets a little obnoxious, but you can tell she puts so much effort into it. Like, there's a scene I remember reading in the book where she goes into the library and she says it smelled like, and then it describes another room. I'm like, you could have just said that it smelled musky. But they didn't have literary critics like me back then, so...
No, they had much better ones.
No, there was no book bloggers back in the 30s.
No, there was not.
No Goodreads, no Amazon reviews.
That's great though, because I think it's rare that you actually truly get a building or a location that is as much of a character as any human being in a story, and I think Manderley does that. And the way you speak of how Daphne Du Maurier describes Manderley, I think Hitchcock presents Manderley in this in this way as well. And I feel like, well, from watching it the first time, I feel like it changes as you get through the mystery.
I get that.
Like, okay, hear me out.
I'm hearing you out.
When the De Winters originally go to Manderley, it's all rainy. And so you're immediately thinking negatively. You're thinking, oh, okay, what's this creepy place? What's going on here? Bit later, everything starts to brighten up a bit. Oh, okay, this is going nice now. We're just starting to get a feel. We, as Mrs. De Winter, because that is basically who we are with through the entire film. We're starting to get a feel for the place now. We're doing a bit of exploring. We're having a generally nice time. And then once the costumed ball happens, and the mist rolls in, and the wind rolls in, and there's a shipwreck, and all of a sudden the weather is just like, right, stuff's gonna go down now. And it does on that exact night. It's perhaps the most, I don't know how to describe it. It's a very integral point in the character arc of Mrs. De Winter when she comes down those stairs at the costumed ball, unknowingly to her, dressed as Rebecca.
That gave me the chills. I'm not gonna lie.
That gave you the chills. I know. I love that though, because it's very. I've always loved it. Like I know in literature you have pathetic fallacy that is essentially the weather mirroring what's going on.
Yep.
This, I think, the entire film of Rebecca was doing that in film terms perfectly, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It does it really well.
What else do you have to say? Because I've talked a lot and I want to hear some of your insights.
Well, there's one thing that I really love about this is all the little subtle things.
Yeah.
Even though, honestly, I'm not a big fan of how the main character is in this story. She's a bit too much of a wet blanket type character to me.
I must say, though, Joan Fontaine gives a great performance.
A great performance, just the character felt like she needed to get a serious bit of backbone about her. But it's like that in the novel too, so I guess she's just playing the character as it is. But there's some parts in the book where, and in this movie, where Mrs.
Danvers, Mrs. Danvers.
I'm just going to call her Mrs. Dickface, because that's what she is.
Don't call Mrs. Danvers that. She would hate you forever. And you know what happens to people she doesn't like?
Well, she's already burnt to a crisp anyway.
Well,
so
that
that's
is
fine.
true.
Well, Mrs. Danvers is like... You see all these creepy things, like her keeping Rebecca's underwear, and her trying to convince Mrs. De Winter to commit suicide, because they make it look as if Rebecca committed suicide in this movie instead of, as it was in the book, where it was an accidental murder. And the funny thing is, in the book, Rebecca isn't really portrayed as perfect as she is in this movie. She has a lot of damage behind her as well. So I think what Daphne Du Maurier was going for was kind of breaking down the idea of the perfect woman, whereas Alfred Hitchcock was using it to create more of an ambiguous mystery. And I like when you can get similar pieces of art that do completely different things like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. An insight like that would only come from having both read and watched Rebecca. I like that. I like that a lot. What do you make of Maxime de Winter then? First of all, what do you make of Laurence Olivier? Because, quite frankly,
Laurence Olivier,
I think the man is
great.
Wonderful. I think he's great.
He's a great actor. The character, however, this is probably going to get me banished from the show, but I was getting a lot of Christian Grey vibes from him.
A lot of Christian Grey vibes from Maxime de Winter. I'm sure many people in the 40s would have killed for Laurence Olivier to go Christian Grey on him.
Oh yeah, but there's a lot of similarities with the character, and even the way the relationship is set up. Like, Mrs. De Winter feels almost like she's trying to fix this guy because she loves him so much, even though she knows nothing about him. That is exactly like 50 Shades of Grey.
It is, and I'd also like to bring up, they fall in love after about 2 days, if that. Very similar to last week's episode.
Yes, but Rebecca is a much better story than 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh, certainly.
But there are similarities.
I thought you were going to say West Side Story then. I thought you were going to say Rebecca's a better story than West Side Story. That's a...
I mean, I can't compare those two.
No, that's a difficult comparison. Much better story than 50 Shades. Of course, let's not talk about 50 Shades. But I feel like maybe this has been a bit unclear so far. We might be half an hour in, but I feel like we've been a bit unclear as to what Rebecca's actually about. If you don't know, you've probably searched by now anyway, but basically, Maxime de Winter's first wife, Rebecca, has died, and it's hurt him a lot, and he's not in the best of ways, and he's a bit depressed, and he goes to Monte Carlo, and there he meets Mrs. De Winter.
She's only referred to as that.
He meets Joan Fontaine, who is only referred to as Mrs. De Winter. They fall in love. They go back to Manderley, the estate, and the mystery behind Rebecca is
unravelled.
Is unravelled, which is a great word to use.
Can I just point out that Mrs. De Winter's former boss, I love her so much.
Oh, I love that woman.
She is so awesome.
Oh, that woman is incredible. She reminded me, and I don't know if it was the same woman, she reminded me of one of the aunts from Arsenic and Old Lace.
Yeah, I get the kind of feeling you're going for. I don't know if it was the same
woman. But she's just very sort of hectic and loud and
obnoxious,
and she just is a perfect high society type character that you just want to have a bit of a laugh with. And it's kind of the most fun thing in the entire film. We start off with that and then get really dark for the rest of it.
The rest of it is so incredibly dark that it just makes her shine a little bit brighter.
Well, yeah, definitely. It's difficult. It's really difficult to talk about some elements of this film without getting into big plot points.
Yeah. We could talk about Jasper the dog and how wonderful he is.
Jasper, I happen to think Jasper plays a very important part.
Please go on, because even reading the book, I didn't really see Jasper as that.
Well, without Jasper, Mrs. De Winter would have not discovered the cottage on the coast. Because he's the one that starts barking up at that, and then you meet Ben, who's the disturbed groundskeeper. What is he?
You need a creepy groundskeeper in a story like this.
Is he a groundskeeper? I don't know, but he's very strange, and he's clearly very damaged by Rebecca as well. Like, literally every member of staff there is. None more so than, of course, Mrs. Danvers, but, And I also think Jasper plays a very important part, at least in the film, when right at the end, spoilers again, I do apologise, when right at the end, when it's very clear that Mrs. Danvers is going to go and kill Mrs. De Winter. And Jasper is kind of there, and he notices her, and he's awake, and Mrs. Danvers knows that she pulls out any sort of knife or whatever she's got on her, and Jasper's going to start barking, which will wake Mrs. De Winter, which will ruin all that plan. So I actually think Jasper's more important than you realise.
Jasper is the unsung hero of Rebecca.
Jasper the dog is the unsung hero of Rebecca.
It's like Crookshanks in The Prisoner of Azkaban.
Who is absolutely the unsung hero of Prisoner of Azkaban. Never undermine? Not undermine. Never count out the pet.
Never underestimate the animals.
Never underestimate the pet. The pet can always come in handy in any story, whether it's Harry Potter or Daphne Du Maurier.
Oh, wow. I love the references we make on this show.
I love the nonsense we start talking about. This was supposed to be a serious episode.
It's us. If we actually have a serious episode for once, I will be surprised.
So will I, but this was supposed to be this is a serious film. This is a serious film.
This is
and it's
cinema.
A very, very excellent film. I happen to think it's one of the best mystery films I have ever watched. I think it's one of the best mystery stories I have ever taken in. Just
one of the best mystery stories I've ever read.
Yeah, just because of how many turns it takes. And you think, with 20 minutes to go, you're convinced that one thing is. 15 minutes to go, you're convinced of something else. And then 5 minutes to go, you're convinced of something else. And then, right at the end, there's a big fire. It does truly, truly keep you guessing throughout. And good mysteries should do that. And great mysteries really compel you and leave you feeling moved and feeling like you want to look into it a bit more. And that's what Rebecca did to me. I don't know what you sort of feel towards all that.
I love that fire at the end ties so well into the prologue at the beginning, where you just sort of see the burnt down house, and even the style of the movie font, Rebecca, is written in her handwriting.
Oh yeah, actually, I would like to get your because you were talking about Mrs. Danvers a bit before. What do you make of everything being labelled Rebecca de Winter everywhere?
That's just another little detail to show how much the people here admired Rebecca, but maybe also how they might have knew some of her more darker side and they were trying to hide it from their own minds. And that kind of hysteria is really cool for a mystery story like this. You see it a lot in film noir and
Absolutely.
older mystery books, and it works really well, and especially with Mrs. Danvers, because it's just creepy as fuck.
It is. So that's what you see. You see it as, or you see the staff, at least, of Manderley as knowing about Rebecca's not so good points and just choosing to forget about them rather than
it's like making excuses for someone that you love. It's kind of a whole symbol on domestic abuse kind of thing.
Okay, I must admit that makes more sense now. You're more the Rebecca expert here, even though this was my choice of film, technically. No one's got his choice for next week. But he's definitely the Rebecca expert here. Because I must admit that point actually does make more sense now, because I originally, before you said that, was thinking like they just didn't know about some of the other stuff Rebecca was doing, but that actually makes more sense now. The story works in that
way too.
I think it does, but that makes more sense, and that actually makes for a better little detail, I think. So that's great. I must admit, at first, like, this is again my amateur, never having known anything about Rebecca. The literal only thing I knew about Rebecca was that it was about someone named Rebecca who wasn't actually in it, and it starred Laurence Olivier. That's literally all, and it was Hitchcock. That's all I knew about Rebecca, and it was written by Daphne Du Maurier, the novel, of course, but still. I, at first, thought Rebecca was a ghost.
I bet you were just hoping she was a ghost.
I was hoping she was a ghost, because, and I will bring this up, like I was talking about before, how the location is is very much its own character, very similar in that sense to The Haunting.
That's a good comparison.
Where the location is very much its own character. So I was kind of hoping that Rebecca was a ghost, and that she was going to end up in the West Wing, because nobody ever goes there. Oh, why does nobody ever go there? Why does only Mrs. Danvers go there? I know why only Mrs. Danvers goes there, because Rebecca's there as a ghost, or a spirit, or something like that. But that didn't happen.
That sounds like it would turn into both The Haunting and The Conjuring, knowing what Rebecca was like in the book.
That is actually The Conjuring. I have written a ghost story, and it's called Rebecca, the Spirit. Look out for that in 3 months' time, when I will actually write it. No. Anyway, I don't know what I'm saying. Why did I think she was going to be a ghost, though? Can you explain that to me?
I think you just wanted that to happen. Maybe, like, they all wanted to remember Rebecca as this great spirit kind of person.
You certainly feel the presence of Rebecca throughout. That's made abundantly clear, like you said, by all the little details. And it really undermines Mrs. De Winter. And I mean, I know you said you thought Mrs. De Winter wanted to grow a backbone at some stages, but I really took her character as just being like, stop being so mean to her. What's she done? Yeah, that's very much what I was thinking.
I wish she stood up for herself a little bit more, because it's hard to relate to a main character like that.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. That's fair, actually. I'll take that. What else should we talk about? There's a lot to talk about, but what else should we talk about before we start to maybe wrap up?
I'm trying to think of another detail here that I really enjoyed.
Something else about Laurence Olivier, perhaps? Actually, I think Laurence Olivier's, or Maxim's, character arc is actually great as well.
It is.
Because it's very much like you start off thinking, oh, he's damaged by the death of his former wife. Then you sort of go into, wait a minute, did he have something to do with it? And then it's like, he actually didn't have anything to do with it, but he very nearly had something to do with it. Also, I like how he actually appears, at least, as everything's getting unravelled about Rebecca, he appears to fall in love with Mrs. De Winter more.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Do you get that as well?
That makes a lot of sense to me, yeah.
Because they didn't seem, like I said, a 2-day romance in Monte Carlo, and they're married like that. Because, stories.
I should go to Monte Carlo. I might find happiness there.
Oh, you won't find happiness there. You'll find weirdness there, and just weirdness, so much weirdness. I remember watching a football game in Monte Carlo. It was on, I think it was PSG versus Nice, in a bar. Anyway.
Sounds like it was that ended with, and then I nearly got stabbed and ran away back to Manchester.
No, this was Monte Carlo. Everybody's wearing a suit.
Oh, suits.
Everybody looks like the start of Rebecca. It's weird. But yeah, I think Laurence Olivier, Maxim, I should say, I keep calling him Laurence Olivier just because I like to do that. He definitely seems like he loves Mrs. De Winter more towards the end once everything is known about Rebecca. It's almost as though, even though he knew about Rebecca's bad side, it's almost as though he actually finally now entirely is accepting Rebecca's bad side and is moving on from it. But then, of course, the fire disrupts all that right at the end, so yes, Maxim and Mrs. De Winter might be, or Mr. and Mrs. De Winter might be left in each other's arms, but they don't have a home no more.
Let the past die. Kill it if you have to.
Let the past die. Let the past die. Yeah, let the past die. Insight. Okay, so, context. The book I've just finished, because, I'm into books now, because,
Because I've infected your brain.
Probably, you probably have. It's your fault, this.
But you don't read the kind of books I read.
No, that's true, but it's still your fault.
You will not be reading Ready Player One anytime soon.
No, I certainly won't. But still, it's your fault. The book I've just finished reading is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And that is very much about sort of the repetition of time, and it's not anything like Rebecca, but you just having said that, and when it just let the past die, very similar to how 100 Years of Solitude ends, with a sort of let the past die, because in that book a huge hurricane basically wipes out the town and there's nothing left but basically what was there at the start of the novel. So I don't know. I thought I'd be clever there, but it turned out to be nonsense.
Get into literature.
I thought I'd be clever there, but it sort of turned into a bit of just letting people know that I'm actually reading books rather than offering any decent insight whatsoever.
Don't worry, you'll get there. You just gotta read as much as I do.
I won't do that.
I read a new book at least every week.
That is ridiculous.
I love storytelling. Anyway. I have to.
Anyway, while we start to wrap up, what do you want to say any more on the film of Rebecca, or just Rebecca as a story? Why is it great? Why should people watch and or read it?
If you love mysteries that like to break down character archetypes and take them in a new direction, go check out Rebecca. If you've seen the movie of Rebecca, go back and read the book. And if you've read the book and you're a snob like me who hates it when movies ruin books, go and check out the movie. It's a pretty loyal adaptation with some interesting changes.
We've not even. I mean, we've barely mentioned Hitchcock, but I'm sure everybody's familiar with Hitchcock and just how incredible of a director Hitchcock is. This is a Hitchcock film. It's as incredible as his other films. It's not in that lovely colour. It is in very stark black and white, and I've not even talked about the fact that it's black and white because I was screaming throughout this film. I'm just going, shadows! Love it! Shadows!
We are going to release a commentary track of Rebecca with Morgan just yelling shadows for the whole...
I happen to think that we should, if we can figure anything out, that we should do some commentary tracks. I just think that'd be great.
I would love to do that.
I would love to do that as well. Please let us know if you would like us to do that, if that sounds like something that you would be into. Again, it'd just be me talking for the entire time and Nolan every so often getting in when I have gaps in my sentences because I do talk far too much on these things. And people are probably sick of it. But I can't help myself. I just never know how to finish a sentence. See, I did it then.
So what's your final thoughts on Rebecca?
My final thoughts on Rebecca are, it's dark as hell, it's a bit twisted, it's a wonderful mystery. Laurence Olivier, who should also be entered into Moustache Wars.
Including Henry Cavill.
Not Henry, no. We're not going to watch any Henry Cavill films on It's a Wonderful Podcast, are we? No. No. Moustache Wars with Clark Gable.
Fair enough. I'll give you that.
Laurence Olivier is the third, technically the second inductee into the Moustache Hall of Fame of It's a Wonderful Podcast beside Clark Gable. We haven't done any Vincent Price films yet, but as soon as we do one, he will also be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he's already in the Hall of Fame of It's a Wonderful Podcast Moustache Hall of Fame inductees. I'm just saying the words now. I don't know what's going on.
I just got wrapped up in that, to be honest.
I'm making this a thing. I'm making the Moustache Hall of Fame a thing. Everybody has one. Laurence Olivier is not as good as Clark Gable's. Not as good as Clark Gable's moustache. But he's a fantastic actor. Of course, most well known for his Shakespeare stuff and stage stuff. But every so often he'd do something like this. And it's worthwhile checking out Rebecca to see him in a screen role. Because he's great. Joan Fontaine is also great. Everybody's great. Rebecca's great. It's wonderful. It's very, very cheerful. It's not cheerful at all. It's really quite miserable. But it's wonderfully miserable, and it works perfectly. And my final thoughts have gone on for 3 more minutes than Nolan's have. So I'm gonna let Nolan talk for the literal. Apart from me doing my little plug, I'm gonna let him talk for the rest of the time because he is picking what is for episode 9 next week. Nolan, have you picked anything?
I have.
He has picked anything, and he hasn't told me.
Yes, it's... I don't know if this is going to be a surprise to you or not, but you guys know that I love me a little genre movie.
Oh, a genre movie.
I didn't want to pick a musical again, because we just did West Side Story, but we'll get some more musicals later.
Certainly will.
I want to talk about a movie that I'm very, very passionate about, that had a remake last year that I fucking hated.
Ooh.
Can you guess what I'm talking about?
Nolan, are you going to kill me by taking the first horror we do away from me? Are you going to really do this to me?
Well, I consider it more of a gothic love story, but we're talking The Mummy.
You're going to do this to me. I'm not happy about this. No, I'm not happy about it. I've turned my back on him.
He's going to turn back soon.
I am because the microphone is over here and it's more comfortable. Yes. I cannot wait. I love The Mummy. The Mummy's so...
I can't wait to watch it again and force my brother to watch it again because it's hilarious seeing him react to old monster movies.
It's been ages since I've watched it as well, you know. It's been ages since I've watched it. I can't wait to do that. I have it
on Blu-ray, so it's going to be awesome.
Yes. Episode 9, The Mummy. I can't wait for that. I cannot wait for that.
Yeah.
That's going to be a wonderful, wonderful episode. Nolan, plug away.
Well, there is a certain thing coming up tomorrow on Netflix, but it's very disturbing, and you should probably not watch it. But if you want to watch something on my YouTube channel that's also very depressing, there's a video essay on a series of unfortunate events featuring a very special guest, Mr. Lemony Snicket, and I couldn't get him to leave my fucking flat. He's still making pasta puttanesca in my fucking kitchen, reading Oxford dictionaries, and he just won't fucking leave. So if you give me some views on that essay, he might fuck off.
I'd like to point out that Nolan is clearly very angry with Lemony Snicket.
He won't leave my flat.
Due to the amount of F-bombs he's dropping on what's supposed to be a PG show. God damn it.
We could just bleep those out.
I'm not doing that. I'm not bleeping that. That's far too much work. Wonderful, though. Go and check that out. And of course, I'll do my little plug. I'll do my little plug now, if I can, which I can because it's I have authority. I don't have authority. I'm just rambling again.
I love when you do.
I'm just rambling again. I'm in fact wasting time, is what I'm doing. I'm reading horror stories now, ghost stories. They're great. I love reading ghost stories. You can check out some readings of ghost stories and gothic stories I've done on the Purple Dawn YouTube channel. If you're on YouTube, it is one of the featured channels, along with Nolan's, where you can find all Nolan's stuff, including that series of unfortunate events. Video essay stories as lessons, whatever it's called these days.
That's what it's called. And I got Lemony Snicket to come
and he got Lemony Snicket, which is it's really just Nolan dressed in a black suit. Don't tell anyone. Shh. But no, if you're at all interested in ghost stories and for some reason like listening to my voice, I promise I don't ramble in them because, well, the writing is in front of me and I just have to read that. But they're great to do. They're great to record, so go and check them out if you want. If you are on Apple, or if you are on audio only, I should say, because there's a number of places you can get this on audio only, then go on over to YouTube and search Purple Dawn, search Nolan Dean, and check out all our stuff. And if you are on audio only, rate and review, please do that, and because that's wonderful. Follow the podcast at It's a Wonderful One. Follow me at the Purple Dawn with a 3 instead of the E in the, because Patrice Evra. Nolan, where are people following you?
They can follow me at NolanDean27, where I think for the next week I'm going to be gushing out about how amazing Ready Player One was.
Probably will, won't you? I'm not going to go see Ready Player. I'm sorry, okay, I'm sorry, I'm not going to go and see Ready Player One because I'm just not interested in it. I'm just not interested. I would much rather watch Rebecca again.
Rebecca Player One.
No, not Rebecca. No, okay. On that absolute hellhole of a statement.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, guys, until The Mummy next week. It's going to be great. See you later.